In the future, running is illegal if you're rich. Luckily, Will reacted fast enough to stop in time. Otherwise, his overnight fortune would have been exposed. To mask the fact that he was born poor, Will walked straight into a 5-star hotel, skipped any explanation, and booked a presidential suite on the spot. Strangely enough, the front desk didn't charge him a dime. They just scanned his wrist with the device and handed him the room key. You see, in this future, money no longer exists. Instead, people pay with time. Everyone has a timer embedded in their arm. It's both currency and a countdown to death. The moment it hits 0, you drop dead on the spot. But if you've got enough time, you can live forever. Just 3 days ago, Will was a broke factory worker, barely scraping by on what he earned each day. The time he made was just enough to survive until tomorrow. The company routinely shorted him on overtime pay, and while it made his blood boil, he swallowed his anger. Because if he got fired, he wouldn't even have enough time left to find another job. Then one night, Will ran into a middle-aged man at a dance hall. And that's when the wheels of fate began to turn. The man's timer showed a full 100 years. But flashing that kind of wealth naturally attracted the wrong crowd. Will stepped up to warn the guy, only to be brushed off with cold indifference. Right then, a gang of time robbers got wind of where he was and rushed to the bar. The packed dance floor emptied in seconds as everyone scrambled to get out. Even with thugs closing in, the rich man stayed perfectly calm. He even excused himself to use the restroom with his life on the line. Then out of nowhere, Will sprang from the shadows, took down the guards, and got the man out alive.
Get him!
The two of them tore through the streets, nearly getting caught several times before finally shaking off the robbers in an abandoned building. Seeing the rich man crack a smile, Will couldn't help but ask, why would someone like him come to the slums just to flaunt his wealth? The man let out a sigh. His beloved wife had recently died in an accident, and he had thousands of years sitting on his timer. The thought of spending eternity alone was more than he could bear, so he'd come to the ghetto to end it all. Will felt a wave of sympathy wash over him, but from the man, he also learned a brutal truth. In this world, 90% of all time is hoarded by the rich. They jack up prices in the poor districts and suppress wages, driving up the cost of living so people can never afford to stop and rest. That's the only way the wealthy can live forever in luxury. Then the rich man asked Will, if you had as much time as I do, what would you do? Will rolled up his sleeve, glanced at his nearly empty timer, and answered without hesitation. He wouldn't waste a single second. The rich man just looked at him in silence. The next morning, Will checked his wrist like he always did, and nearly fell over. His timer now showed 100 years. The rich man was gone. Will rushed to the window and saw the man sitting quietly by the bridge. He'd given every last second of his life to Will, then simply waited for the end. The moment his heart stopped, the man slipped gently into the river and vanished beneath the current. By the time Will got there, all he found was a cold, lifeless body. But what he didn't know was that an inconspicuous security camera overhead was about to bring him a world of trouble. That night, Will showed up with flowers, hoping to surprise his mother. But when the bus pulled in, she wasn't on it. A sinking feeling hit him instantly, and he sprinted toward her workplace. Here's what had happened. When his mother got on the bus, the fare had suddenly jumped from 1 hour to 2. After paying her mortgage, she only had an hour and a half left, and walking home would take a full 2 hours. She was trapped. She begged the driver to let her ride and have her son cover the difference at the other end. But company rules were ironclad, and the driver's hands were tied. Not a single passenger offered to help. So she got off to try the bank for a loan, only to find it had already closed. Her only option was to run. Half an hour later, mother and son were finally running toward each other. But her timer was down to 10 seconds. They both gave it everything they had. Will reached out to grab her, but he was 1 second too late. Just like that, the joy of his newfound fortune was obliterated, replaced by nothing but grief and rage. Will blamed it all on the rules the rich had written. He swore he'd take back everything they'd stolen. The next day, he gave 10 years to his best friend, then set off for the wealthy district without looking back. But before he even got there, reality slapped him in the face. Passing through just 3 security checkpoints cost him 2 full years. That's when it truly hit him. How impossibly hard it is for the poor to break through the class barrier. Will's plan for revenge was dead simple. Take their time. He headed straight for the biggest casino in the rich district. After a few small wins, he built up a bankroll of 250 years, which earned him an invite to the high-stakes tables. And who should he run into but the wealthiest banker in the district? The banker was carrying 9,000 years in pocket change. He could tell Will wasn't from around here and made a point of giving him a hard time. His opening bet was 50 years. Will didn't flinch. He matched it. The banker's daughter noticed her father had found a challenger and wandered over to watch. The banker was getting fired up. He threw in 2 more centuries, trying to scare Will into folding. But Will had already made peace with death. He shoved all his chips to the center, leaving himself just enough time to flip his cards. Father and daughter were both stunned, speechless. Luck was on Will's side. He won the entire pot, pushing his total past 1,000 years. The banker was so impressed by his nerve that he introduced Will to his daughter and invited him to a dinner party at his mansion. Will happily accepted, but the look Sylvia gave him as she walked away, she was clearly interested. That was enough to make Will think he'd actually made it into high society. His thirst for revenge faded to the back of his mind. He swung by a car dealership, dropped 60 years on a supercar, and drove straight to the banker's oceanfront estate. The banker warmly introduced his family, his mother-in-law, his wife, and his daughter. With a little nudge from her father, Sylvia and Will shared a dance in the center of the room. The more they talked, the more they clicked. Sylvia started to feel there was something different about Will, and her feelings only grew stronger. But just as the evening was going smoothly, the timekeepers showed up and hauled Will upstairs for questioning. They'd found the rich man's body under the bridge, and the surveillance footage made Will look suspicious. Cross-referencing his checkpoint records with citywide cameras, they'd tracked his every move. Will kept his cool and explained, the man took his own life and gave away his time willingly. But the lead officer scoffed. In all his years on the force, he'd never once seen a rich person commit suicide. Only the poor killed over time. So Will never got a chance to defend himself. Nearly all his time was confiscated, leaving him with just 2 hours. Officially, it was lawful seizure. In reality, it was a death sentence. Will wasn't about to sit around and wait to die. When the guards let their attention slip, he struck fast, knocked them both out, leaped downstairs, grabbed Sylvia as a hostage, and sped off. The officer jumped in his car and gave chase. Thankfully, Will was a hell of a driver. He deliberately went the wrong way down traffic and used a semi-truck to force the pursuit car to a stop, buying them just enough room to escape. But a new problem was already staring him in the face. He had less than an hour left. He desperately asked Sylvia for help, but she flatly refused. She wasn't about to lend her time to a murderer. There was no time to explain. Will just kept driving toward the slums with Sylvia in tow. As for how he managed to survive the trip, one look at Sylvia's tear-streaked face told the whole story. He thought they were in the clear, but an ambush was waiting up ahead. The car spun out and rolled down a hillside, knocking them both unconscious. Before long, the time robbers arrived on the scene. Seeing Will had only half an hour left, the boss figured the trip was a waste. Then he spotted 10 full years on Sylvia's wrist. But before he could finish the transfer, police sirens blared from every direction. His crew scattered, and the boss, seething, had no choice but to bail. Shortly after the robbers left, Sylvia woke up first. Seeing she was down to just 30 minutes sent a jolt of clarity through her foggy mind. Will, on the other hand, was strangely calm, because he'd given those 10 years to his friend, and now it was time to cash in that favor. It was the friend's wife who answered the door. Will asked where his buddy was, and the answer hit him like a freight train. After coming into all that time, his friend blew 9 years in one night buying drinks and drank himself to death at the bar. The guilt cut through Will like a knife. His act of generosity had gotten his friend killed. They were down to just over 2 minutes, and things were spiraling fast. Will racked his brain for a way out while Sylvia kept arguing, making it impossible to think straight. He snapped at her to stop, and in that moment, an idea struck. He noticed the earrings Sylvia was wearing were real diamonds. He grabbed her hand and bolted for the nearest pawn shop. The owner saw they had less than a minute left and lowballed them. 2 days. They had no choice but to take it. But 2 days wasn't nearly enough. So Will decided to call the banker and demand a ransom for his daughter. The one who picked up, though, was the timekeeper. Unfazed by the threats thrown back at him, Will went big. 1,000 years. Delivered to a designated bank by noon the next day, or Sylvia was done for. For the banker, 1,000 years was pocket change. But he hesitated. He knew his daughter's personality all too well. Sylvia had already taken Will's side, and he was right. After everything they'd been through together, Sylvia had realized Will was innocent. Learning what happened to his mother opened her eyes to how cruel the system really was. But what truly pushed her over the edge was what her father did next. When noon came, the bank didn't send the money. It shut its doors early. Sylvia stared at the closed bank, and a hollow sense of betrayal washed over her. Will, not wanting to see her hurt, told her the police must have blocked her father from delivering the ransom. Then he decided to send her home while the streets were still crowded. To keep her safe from anyone who might follow, he handed her a gun. But just as Sylvia was on the phone tearing into her father for his heartlessness, the timekeeper crept up behind Will. He was about to be taken down, until Sylvia turned around just in time, saw what was happening, and pulled the trigger. The shot hit the officer and saved Will's life. They jumped into the officer's car and tore out of there, and with that, there was no going back. Worried the police car would draw too much attention, they carjacked a luxury vehicle in the wealthy district. The driver tried to stall when Will pulled the gun, but Sylvia fired a shot the very next second and made the point crystal clear. Convinced he was dealing with armed criminals, the terrified driver threw open the door and gave up his employer's location. The pair scored 10 years of time and swiped the lady's diamond earrings for good measure.
You out.
Then they drove off without a backward glance. Between assaulting an officer and armed robbery, the two were now wanted across the entire city. When the banker found out, he went straight to the timekeepers, ready to spend 1,000 years to get his daughter's warrant dropped. But the lead officer refused to play ball. Left with no other option, the banker pulled strings with the higher-ups in law enforcement. What he never could have predicted, though, was what Sylvia was about to do next. Something even God himself couldn't save her from.